caught behind. Yes, that's the end of that. Sachin Tendulkar once again is on his way.
And a big edge. There's a terrific wicket for Brad Williams. And 87 has struck again.
Test cricket has seen a lot of great innings. 50s, hundreds, double hundreds, triple hundreds, even a quadruple hundred if that's what it's called. But what makes an innings truly great? Now generally, the more you score, the better the innings is. But that is not all. People do have different criteria to judge the quality of an innings. Now those criteria can differ from person to person, but it is generally accepted that the quality of an innings depends on 1. The conditions, 2. The opposition, and 3. The situation. The more difficult the runs are, the better the quality of an innings is. But sometimes that difficulty of runs doesn't come from outside but from within. And that's the kind of innings we are going to talk about. Consider subscribing to our channel. It's free and helps us a ton. Thanks. Let us set the stage for you. The year is 2003. India is playing Australia in Australia. Now anybody from that era knows how difficult it was to tour Australia. They were only the best team in the world who were even better at home. When India toured there earlier in 1999, they were thrashed 3-0, whitewashed completely. Indian batting more often than not was in shambles. Nobody could buy a run in that Indian side. Nobody but one man, Sachin Tendulkar. Well, to be honest, Sachin had become accustomed to playing the role of a lone warrior for India abroad. People today won't realize how bad India was at travelling. If the ball bounced over knee height from good length, Indian batsmen would be all at sea. Only the greatest would ever survive, and Sachin was one of the greatest ever. He had been carrying the team for so long on his back. But things changed. Over the years, India had found some other warriors who could stand by his side. Rahul Dravid had become one of the best batsmen to ever bat at number 3 across the world. Virender Sehwag had emerged as an unconventional but highly destructive opener. VVS Lakshman had become the backbone of the Indian middle order. And last but not the least, Sourav Ganguly had emerged as the fiercest leader of men that India had maybe seen ever. So we come back to the tour down under. Australia, one of the toughest places to tour, not only for India but for the entire world, was seeing a very different Indian team come to their shores. An Indian team that was not willing to give up. An Indian team that despite its shortcomings was ready to fight. The tone was set from the very first test. Every batsman we mentioned before played their role to perfection in the series. The captain, Sourav Ganguly, led from the front, scoring a breathtaking 144 at Brisbane, guiding India out from the doldrums of 62 for 3 to 409. India taking the lead against Australia on a track on which traditionally India would struggle immensely was the greatest signal of intent if there was any. But if it was Ganguly in the first test, it was Dravid's turn in the second. In reply to Australia's mammoth 556, India were reeling at 85 for 4 when Dravid played one of the greatest innings an Indian has ever played on the Australian soil. In fact, his 233 is maybe the greatest innings played by an Indian on foreign soil ever. India went on to win the test on the back of his stellar batting in both the innings. After Ganguly and Dravid, it was Sehwag's turn at Melbourne to set the stage alight, scoring a blistering 195 on the opening day, putting the Aussie attack to sword. India's batting faltered later, leading to India's loss, but Sehwag's innings is still regarded one of the greatest knocks played by an Indian opener overseas. Through all this, one man remained the backbone of the Indian middle and late order. Yes, VVS Lakshman ensured that these innings had the requisite support from the other end. When Ganguly scored 144 at Brisbane, Lakshman supported him with his 75 in a partnership of 136 runs. When India were on the floor in Adelaide, it was Lakshman who combined with Dravid, scoring 148 of his own runs and combining in a partnership of 303 on the other end. Even Akash Chopra, who no one even remembers from the tour, scored some useful runs at the top of the innings, and more importantly, provided support to Sehwag. So as you see, almost every Indian batsman was scoring runs on this tour. Everyone, except one. Yep, Sachin Tendulkar. Australia had usually been a happy place for Sachin, but this tour was different. The man on whom the whole country had depended on for so long was having a torrid time in the middle. The 3 tests for Sachin had produced a grand total of 82 runs thus far. His string of scores across 5 innings read 0, 1, 37, 0 and 44. More than the low scores, it was the manner in which he was getting out that was specifically troubling. It was one specific delivery that kept getting him out. Or more specifically, it was one specific shot that was getting him out constantly. The cover drive outside off stump. He had gotten out edging behind to the keeper 3 times out of 5. Well, we should really count 3 out of 4 because once he was claimed by his old nemesis, Steve Buckner. But jokes aside, it had become a huge problem for him. 2 of those 3 times when he edged behind was him playing a cover drive to an innocuous full ball outside off. For a batsman of his stature, that was inexcusable. Now, any batsman can be out of form. It's no different for even the greatest batsman ever. But Sachin's lack of runs had bigger implications on Team India, which we'll get into as we move forward. So now, we move to Sydney, the final test of the series. The series is locked at 1-all. India had already done one unthinkable by now, not getting blown away by Australia. Australia's dominance in Test cricket at home was such at the time that since 1997, they had lost only 2 Test matches at home before this series. Not 2 Test series, 2 Test matches, both to England. They were blowing teams away left, right and centre. So going into the last Test match all level, and that too while winning a Test, was already a victory in itself for India. But India were not going into the final Test with just a victory. They were going into the final Test with a chance to create history. India wins the toss and decides to bat first on a good-looking batting track. And the decision is instantly rewarded with how Sehwag and Chopra began. They raced to 123 on either side of lunch, vindicating Ganguly's decision to bat first. But then disaster strikes as Gillespie and Bretley get rid of both Sehwag and Chopra in space of 3 overs. 123 for no loss becomes 128 for 2 in no time. And thus, out walks the protagonist of our story, Sachin Tendulkar. He's out of sorts, out of form. Australia smelled blood. This is where Australia have had India in the series, Tendulkar's indifferent form. They have a simple plan for him. Pack the offside field, feed him balls outside off, and he'll just get himself out like he had been doing all series. So they work on the plan. They keep a 7-2 field and bowl outside off stump. Except Tendulkar isn't buying what they're selling. He's leaving most of the balls outside off. He struggles a bit against Stuart McGill, but for the most part, he is determined to not drive or slash on balls outside off. Scoring is slow, but the cautious tactic is working for India. India's most informed batsman, Dravid, does succumb to Gillespie after a dogged 38, but that does not faze Sachin. He is determined and he's not giving up. And he finds an able partner in another informed batsman, VVS Lakshman. They keep batting and batting and batting through the day. Sachin brings up his 50 of 100 balls, his first 50 of the series, and by his standards, a pretty slow one, but it does not matter. India ends the first day on 284 for 3. Sachin has successfully survived the day, still unbeaten at 73, but the most striking feature of his batting is his discipline. Of the 156 balls he faced on day 1, 101 were outside off, and he scored only 19 runs of those. A remarkable display of discipline shows how important this tenet is. This is a man who had scored 31 hundreds at that time. He could have thrown his wicket away again and again and again, and no one would have questioned his place in the side. But that's not who Sachin is. He doesn't take this lightly. More importantly, he knows the job's only half done. He remembers Melbourne, where India had made similar starts, but in both the innings, the middle order collapsed like a pack of cards. From 350 for 4 to 366. From 253 for 4 to 286. Sachin may have powered his way through to score some runs and regain his form, but he knows he cannot throw it away. The implication of him getting out could be devastating collapse that could rob India of history. He has to stay. He has to work hard. He cannot give up. And thus, on day 2, we see one of the most dogged, the most disciplined display of batting. Australia doesn't give up on their offside ploy, but Sachin isn't willing to give in either. In a display of sheer will, Sachin brings up his 32nd Test 100 of 212 balls. A slow but steady growth. He is able to take his time because from the other side, Lakshman is going from strength to strength, scoring at will. Sachin forces Australia to rethink. He forces Australia to bowl to him, and despite the game being firmly in the grasp of India, he does not waver. He keeps batting. Tendulkar keeps battling on, even when Lakshman on the other end is covering Aussie bowling for fun. So much so that he overtakes Sachin in scoring. He gets to his 150 before Sachin, but it still doesn't have any impact on Sachin. Sachin's 150 comes off 328 balls. He's still playing well within himself. The partnership that began at 194 for 3 swells beyond 350 and finally ends at 353 when Lakshman falls for 178. India sit at 547 for 4, firmly in the driver's seat. Ganguly comes out with intent to score quickly and perishes. Parthiv Patel joins Sachin with the same intent. On the other end, Sachin is being the avatar of discipline, bringing up his third double hundred in 395 balls. Now here, one can question India's decision to not declare, but India goes on to end the day's play at 650 for 5 with Sachin sitting pretty at 220. The day 3 of Indian batting is academic as India finally declares at 705 for 7, their highest test total at the time. Sachin returns with his own highest test score, 241 not out in 436 deliveries with 33 boundaries and not a single one of them through the covers. Now how important the innings was in terms of result in this test is up for debate because after a fierce competition, the test ended in a draw and history eluded India. In the context of the game, maybe India declared a bit too late, chasing records. Or maybe the pitch was just too easy to bat on as both teams piled on the runs. We'll never know. What we do know is Sachin played maybe one of the greatest innings ever seen. Sachin himself acknowledged how much this innings meant to him, saying, "I would put this innings right at the top of my hundreds. I had a plan and I'm happy I could execute it well. I'm happy that I was able to maintain the discipline throughout the innings. Things had gone wrong a couple of times with my shot selection and I knew I had to cut out a few strokes." Sachin through his career had been an aggressive, flamboyant stroke player and cover drive was one of his most played strokes. The sheer magnitude of his willpower to cut out a specific shot that had fetched him so many runs over his career is unfathomable. Yet, he went on and did it. Sachin Tendulkar through his career has played some of the greatest innings that cricket has ever seen. We could even say that he has played way more eye-pleasing and aesthetic innings than the one he played in Sydney. But this innings is a testament in what a player can do with just absolute determination and bloody one-mindedness. Batsmen over the years have scored bigger scores, maybe even more difficult runs. But this innings from Sachin stands out because this wasn't played just for the team or to overcome the conditions or the challenges posed by the opposition, but to overcome a challenge within himself, to conquer his own demons. In that regard, this is maybe the best innings Sachin has ever played. And that's why this will be remembered as one of the greatest innings ever. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe and comment for more content like this. This is Cricket Archives.